Norway has been successful in comparison to many other countries globally at avoiding a complete and guaranteed collapse of the economy. There are some bright spots along the way amidst a sea of darkness. Whether it's unemployment, the stock market, or the currency, we must keep a close eye on the indicators and pull them all together to get a sense of proper judgment. Well, that's why you came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Our focus for today's video will be exclusively Norway. This video is dedicated to all of my subscribers in Norway. Hello to all my friends there. As we look at the connection between Norway and oil, I'm also going to show various indicators right here that are very important at this time for those looking into Norway, those living there. Let's begin with the Norwegian stock market. As you can see clearly that since the financial crisis, it has risen significantly. There's no denying that. And you can see over the past year, let's say, where the stock market has been fluctuating rather rapidly, and that's no different than other stock markets. But even since the stoppage of QE3, it has risen quite a bit. And that is very different from what we have seen with the US, for example, as it has been really stagnant ever since, volatility within a range. So just looking at this single indicator, you can see that, yes, the stock market has risen, and in that way, Norway has won, I would say. But, of course, there's so much more to look at. Moving on to this. This is the currency. As you can see, it versus the US dollar, and over time, it has weakened. And that showing you here quite significantly that their currency weakens against the US dollar. Now, what does that do? In many ways, we can see that this increases the stock market, as I showed you just recently with Venezuela. You can devalue the currency, and as a result, look more attractive for exports. You can have this be a way to pump up asset prices. There's all sorts of schemes, reasons why countries will do this, or it could happen simply in an organic fashion. Now, just taking it like it is, let's note the fact that the currency is weaker than where it was a few years ago. Moving on to this. Basically, all I wanted to note from this was that the interest rate is being held at 0.5%. So we have historically low interest rates at this time in Norway. It doesn't mean that it can't go up from here. It also doesn't mean that it can't go down from here. But what I would say specifically is that we have a global phenomenon, and that is low interest rates. Low interest rates skew everything. It pumps up the stock market when you put these interest rates to levels that are basically making individuals not want to invest in the stock market, simply because what's the point? Why invest in a savings account rather when you can invest in the stock market and perhaps achieve better returns? So that's what's happening with not only individuals, but it's happening with all other types of investment corporations that look into achieving, even if it's pennies, to getting some sort of return for their clients. That's what we can see here, and we can see how low interest rates skew all of this. And then you look at the unemployment rate. Yes, the unemployment rate is significantly lower than many other countries, but again, do we take it at face value? Look at the US having a very similar unemployment rate. In this case here, adjusted for seasonal variations, the unemployment rate was 4.8% in January. What I would say is that, look, the US and Norway both showing us that there is about 5% unemployment. Now, do we take that for what it is? I can't really do so, especially when I know specifically that the US unemployment rate is completely false. So I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to say it's probably higher, but at this time, what we need to note is that the government has admittedly decided to show us it has been increasing. It's been doing so since May of 2014. So more people are worse off today than they were a few years ago in Norway, in this indicator itself. Moving on here, the Norway GDP since 2014, of course correlating entirely, has been declining. It has been fluctuating, surely, but it has been a slight decline in their GDP. Connected in with that, Norwegian real economic growth. And you can see the blue line there being inflation, the orange line GDP growth, and then we have the real economic growth being the gray line. And you can see how that has moved into the negative territory. During the financial crisis, it came down. And then over the few years, it was able to get back up a little bit, but since then, it has declined significantly, and this is real economic growth, that's GDP and inflation together. When you factor that in, we have ourselves a little problem. So I like these type of charts because it shows you the truth behind what's going on here in Norway. Norwegian household debt to income. Now, while the difference isn't significant, it is quite apparent. It has been a straight line upwards. There have been very few setbacks along the way, and what we can see is that the debt to income ratio as a percentage, and it doesn't seem to me at least that this is any different than most other countries. As you can see in Canada, for example, I believe is 163% or greater than that. And you look at these other countries where people are simply worse off. Whether or not they're unemployed, it doesn't matter. In fact, I've shown you the statistics here where you look at US-based stats showing the fact that people, even if they're not unemployed, they're actually below the poverty line in many cases. And that there skews the numbers entirely. If people can't make ends meet and they're not showing up on the stats how you want to show that, it doesn't matter because it shows up in one way, shape, or form. Sure, it might not show on the whole fake unemployment numbers, but it shows up in all of the mess that we see. Moving on, Brent oil price versus the trade balance. Norway is intimately connected with oil, and this right here shows you that, and it's very clear that these two are absolutely correlated. And this right here is what I wanted to leave you with. There's two charts, essentially the exact same. One is a longer timeline. Digging deeper and deeper, Norway plans to increase withdrawals from its wealth fund next year amid oil's slump. So because of the price of oil, in Norway, the biggest sovereign wealth fund has to start selling off. And that right there is not a good sign, where you have the biggest sovereign wealth fund having to sell off. And again, this is showing you from 2009, but if we stretch back further, from 1998, you can get a sort of a longer picture here. Quarterly inflow from the government is the orange, and now what we're seeing is the quarterly outflow to the government. And this reminds me a lot of the intragovernmental debt that we see in the US, having to borrow from the future, and it doesn't ever become a pretty sight. Never. And, okay, it's just for a short period of time amidst a very long period of time of inflows. But if it's a trend that continues, Norway is in some serious trouble. It shows real serious trouble. Now, if you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I want to also suggest to everyone that if you want to see videos about your particular country, I've done quite a few and will continue to do more in the future as I collect the data, as I get requests from people all the time. There are so many I still have to do, but you can actually look at that. If you go to my YouTube channel here, scroll down, and there's a section that says Global Economic Collapse. And you go through there, there's a whole playlist. You could see videos for the UK and Italy and Canada and others where I show you the specifics, because I often cover for a lot of the data from the US, and because most of the audience here is from the US. So that's who I'm showing, but I've got so many people from the Scandinavian countries, from all sorts of places in Asia and the Middle East and Africa even, and South America. In fact, basically every country around the world I've heard from, and spoken to many of you individuals through email and others, and has been absolutely amazing to connect with people all over the world. Very, very nice people. So if you want to see those videos, always recommend them on any video, this video or any video, and I'll try to do my best to get videos on that. In the case of Norway, it took me a long time, but I certainly pulled through and will continue to do more in the future. So just head over to the main channel page, youtube.com/themoneygps. Scroll down, look for Global Economic Collapse. If you found this video informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. You can actually look through the book. Just go over to Amazon, where they have this feature called Look Inside, and that will allow you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.